What? Terry was astounded to see that his attack had been stopped. After taking off the weights, his strength and speed would have multiplied tremendously. And to win against Dustin, he even exposed his greatest weapon, his sword. All of this was to ensure his victory against Dustin. However, despite going at Dustin at full force, the latter managed to stop his attack with nothing but 2 fingers. Was Dustin even human? Impossible. Terry's eyes widened as he lost his mind. He began swinging his sword at Dustin non-stop, and the force whipped the air in the arena, causing dust to engulf the place. Terry's continuous blows brought more gouges to the ground until the floor resembled a spider web. Die. You have to die. Terry roared. His attacks picked up speed and became more lethal. Dustin, who was unfazed by the onslaught, dodged and avoided Terry's attacks by twisting his upper body. His feet were still firmly planted on the ground. He would only block attacks with his hands when there was nowhere for him to dodge. The battle in the ring was getting more intense, yet the audience was completely befuddled. Due to Terry and Dustin's high speed, all they could see were shadows and after-images of the two of them. And because of how dangerous Terry's sword aura was to regular martial artists, the crowd had no choice but to scuttle backward and watch the battle from afar. Claudia, I can't see anything. Can you? Maggie struggled to identify the two men. I can't either. They are both way stronger than me. Claudia shook her head. She was still a high-level martial artist, and although she was much stronger than the average martial artist, she still had a long way to go compared to divine-level martial artists. In fact, she was nothing compared to them. Terry should be the one with the upper hand, right? Maggie asked tentatively. Judging from the magnitude of the destruction, it seems like it. Claudia nodded. Terry's sword skill is ruthless, and he also has an ace card, Tempest of the 18 Swords. If he uses that, no one would be able to stop him. Great. Maggie was thrilled to hear that. Although she didn't have the right to learn that technique, she had heard of it before. It was the Doyle family's greatest treasure. It had been around since the family's foundation and was to be used as a last resort when someone had been cornered with no way of escaping. There were rumors that the sword technique in the manuscript increased in power at each level, and so far, no one has ever withstood the last level before. Maggie believed that as long as Terry used it, he would win the battle easily. Fuck. I can't even tell who's who anymore. Zeke stood on tiptoes and peered over the crowd's head. Gordon, do you think Terry will win? Of course, he will, Gordon answered confidently. Dustin might be skilled, but he's still a country bumpkin with no power. Terry is different. As the future head of the Doyle family who's received training from the greatest masters, I'm sure he still has a card up his sleeve that is hiding. That's true. Zeke nodded his head, relieved. As a martial arts family, the Doyle family had a powerful legacy and many martial arts manuscripts that could help one easily defeat their opponent. As long as Terry wanted to, it shouldn't be hard for him to defeat Dustin. Sir Paul, who do you think will win? Hector suddenly turned his attention to Paul, who sat in the middle. The one with a 90% chance, Paul answered with a smile, his eyes crinkling. 90%. Phil smiled. You've got a good eye, Sir Paul. You could tell that my son had an ace up his sleeve, so he should be able to win. Phil had been getting worried that his son might lose, but Paul's words reassured him. As a grandmaster martial artist, no one would dare question what Paul said, so if Paul said that there's a 90% winning chance, it must be true. Although there was 10% left, it was more than enough for him. Paul glanced at Phil, who was full of confidence, but didn't say anything, a knowing smile on his face. Tempest of the 18 Sword. A voice bellowed from the platform as the air turned heavy. Instantly, the entire platform began to shake as cracks spread everywhere. Terry is finally going to use his best move. That's the end of that bastard. Maggie shouted animatedly. One doesn't use Tempest of the 18 Swords unless extremely necessary, but when they do, their opponents will definitely die. Claudia narrowed her eyes. Let's see what you'll do now. Gordon and his friend's eyes were glued to the ring, not wanting to miss seeing Dustin get defeated. Are things finally going to end now? Phil smirked. Although Dustin had surprised him several times, the man was still no match for his son. As long as you withstand this blow, you'll still have a chance to turn things around. Good luck. Hector's fists clenched as he silently prayed for Dustin. Natasha and her sister were also waiting anxiously after hearing that Dustin only had a 10% chance of living. You've got to hold on, Sir Rhys. We're depending on you. Nelson and his men were worried for Duntin. They knew that if their leader lost, the Doyle family was going to completely get rid of their gang. Tempest of the 18 Swords. It's time for you to die, Terry shouted. He gathered all his strength into a single strike and swung his blade toward Dustin. Bang! The cracked arena began crumbling. Dust and debris flew into the air, making it hard for people to keep their eyes open. After some time, the dust finally settled, and only one man was standing among the wreckage. Terry. We won. The Doyle family was overjoyed to see this, and the audience began cheering. You're amazing, Mr. Terry. No wonder he's ranked 13th on the Heavenly Immortals. Today's battle was eye-opening. He is indeed a genius. The audience was grinning widely as they sang praises to him. Terry smiled from where he stood atop the wreckage. Suddenly, he doubled over and spat out a mouthful of blood before collapsing to the ground.